Welcome back. Robert Ferringo with Doc Sports here once again, counting down to the number one team in my 2023 NFL preseason power rankings. There's only two teams left, and if you just look at the title of this video, I think you can figure out who I picked as number one. Not a surprise, Kansas City Chiefs. We will get to them later. Today we are talking with Nolan Patrick of Strike Point Sports, and we were talking about the number two team in the NFL heading into the season, the Philadelphia Eagles. Nolan, thank you for taking the time to join us, one of the top NFL handicappers in the country. Strike Point Sports has put up phenomenal numbers. I know the nickname is Mr. Saturday because of your college football work, but honestly, the last few years, NFL, you have absolutely gotten it done. Are you excited for this upcoming season?
Oh, absolutely. Really, really am. Glad that football is back. We've done well over the course of the summer with summer sports, but we are excited for our bread and butter football.
Okay, if you enjoyed this video or have enjoyed all of these countdown videos, be sure to like and subscribe to the Doc Sports YouTube channel. You can get free picks across a variety of sports from some of the top handicappers in the industry, including Mr. Patrick and Strike Point Sports, who pump out daily free play videos. Also, take advantage of that free $60 link down in the description. That's $60, same as cash, to be used towards any handicapper, any sport, any package that you want. All right, Nolan, we're going with the Eagles at number two. Do you agree with where I have them ranked? Do you disagree? What do you think about this spot for Philadelphia?
I think it's fine. I think that arguably Philly is still the best team in the NFC. I think that you could argue maybe another team from the AFC in this spot, but I have absolutely no problem with Philadelphia being planted as the number two team in the NFL. I don't really like Philadelphia because of my fandom, but they're pretty good.
Yeah, I really, it's so hard because these aren't the same teams that they were last year, right? That's one of the hardest things, like a mental hurdle that bettors have to overcome in all sports. When the season begins, they start betting these teams like they're the same group of people, like they're the same teams that we saw last year. They're not. It's a whole new year. This is a new Philadelphia Eagles team. So we have to kind of move forward. So I'm wondering if even I'm falling in that trap by penciling them in at number two. Now, they should have won the Super Bowl last year. I felt like they were the better team in that game. And frankly, when you looked at what they did statistically throughout the season, I felt like this team, like that team was going to win the Super Bowl and kind of make a claim to being an all-time great team. Kind of like that 93 Washington Redskins team doesn't get the credit it deserves sometimes, I feel like, compared to the 49ers and the Patriots. Like that was an all-time great team. It was only for 1 year, but they were all-time greats. I felt like Philadelphia was on the cusp. Do you think that they are going to be able to get over that mental hurdle of making it to the Super Bowl, being what I felt, and probably if you ask them what they felt was the better team, but losing that game? Are they going to be able to get over that heading into this season?
I think they're still going to be very, very good. I really do. They're a good team on both sides of the football. They're well coached. I think they're still the best team in their division. And as we said, arguably the best team in the NFC. It looks like they're going to have home field advantage in the playoffs again, despite the fact that they have a really, really tough schedule. So I think that they can get back to the Super Bowl. I will tell you one thing about the Philadelphia Eagles, though, is we at Strike Point Sports will not be betting on them in week one, as we will be taking the New England Patriots in that game, because you do not bet on the Super Bowl losers in week one. But other weeks, we'll probably be right back on the Philadelphia Eagles train.
Yeah, that's great that you brought that up. Really interesting that you brought that up. Cincinnati lost outright last year in Pittsburgh in week one. So yes, you don't bet on Super Bowl losers in week one. However, I went back and did a little digging. How do teams that lose the Super Bowl do the next year? Is the Super Bowl hangover a real thing? 39 out of 56 Super Bowl losers actually made the playoffs. So 70% of the time, the team that loses the Super Bowl, they actually make the playoffs the next year. You don't see many teams lose the championship and then completely flame out. Since 2010, only 3 teams didn't make the playoffs the year after losing the Super Bowl, most recently the 2020 49ers. 11 of the 17 that did make it, they completely flamed out. They didn't even make it back to 500. So Philadelphia is still strong in the trenches, right? That's what got them to the Super Bowl. Offensive and defensive line, depth, skill, talent. They still have that. So do you expect those that dominance at the point of attack to carry over into this season?
I do. I absolutely do. Not only are they really good right next to the football, they're really good all over. Offensively, Philadelphia just has name after name after name. Jalen Hurts obviously took the next step in his career and was just fantastic. I think you're going to continue to see him develop. The only reservations I have about the Philadelphia Eagles, it's not about the names on their team. It's not about offense. It's not about defense. It's the fact that their schedule is considerably harder than it was last year. Something that really stuck out to me for Philadelphia is they were 14-3 overall. They were 7-1 on the road. That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing to win 7 of your 8 games. If you take a closer look at their road games, and this is the only thing that worries me about this team because their road games are going to be much harder this year. They beat the Commanders. Whoops, they beat the Commanders by 16 points, I believe, and then they beat the Giants bad by 26 points. If you take those 2 games out, Philly is now 5-1 on the road. They beat the Detroit Lions by 3 in Detroit early in the season before Detroit really started playing better. They beat Arizona by 3. Arizona stinks. They beat Indianapolis by 1. Indianapolis stinks. They beat Chicago by 5. Chicago was okay. And they
Careful.
lost to Dallas. And they lost to the Dallas Cowboys. So the fact that they struggled, they won, and you got to beat the teams on your schedule. The fact that they lost or beat those teams so close, and then this year they have to go to New England, to the Jets, to Kansas City, to Seattle, and to the Rams, who I'm not down on as much as everybody else. I think the Rams are actually going to be a bit better than people think. Not great, but better. That road schedule is night and day compared to last year's road schedule.
Yeah, one of the things we talked about when we were talking about the Giants, when we did the Giants preview, is that last year, the NFC has got to cross over with team and play a bunch of teams from the AFC South. Now they're playing the AFC East, completely different ball game. And it's going to be interesting to see how Philadelphia adjusts going from being the hunter to the hunted. You see teams struggle to make that adjustment. Another reason that they could struggle, what do you think the impact is going to be of them losing both their offensive and defensive coordinator? Big deal, medium deal, no, not a big deal at all because they still have Nick Sirianni there and they're going to be running the same systems. How much do you think that losing both coordinators is going to drag them down on both sides of the ball?
Offensively, I think they're still going to be just fine. I mean, DeAndre Swift, Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Watkins, Goddard, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah,
I think they're
there's a
going to
lot.
be just fine on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, I think that you could see them drop a little bit because they were so good on the defensive side of the football. They lost Jonathan Gannon as their defensive coordinator. They lost 490 tackles, 15 and a half sacks, and 6 interceptions when guys like TJ Edwards, Javon Hargrave, Marcus Epps, Kazir White, when they left, that is a lot. Mind you, down in your neck of the woods, they did essentially draft the entire Georgia Bulldogs defense to come back and help. But I think you're going to see more of an impact on the defensive side of the football. Again, like we talked about the Giants video, especially because they're just playing better teams. And I think they're still going to be able to score just fine. Defensively, I think they're going to struggle a bit. And that's saying something because they were so good. So they're going to drop.
So again, even though it's just kind of talking this out, I'm already feeling myself like, oh, maybe I am overestimating these guys a little bit. Because if you go back and you dig in on some of the numbers last year, look, you win 14 games, you go to the Super Bowl. Like, they were legit last year. I'm not taking anything away from them, but we're handicappers, right? We need to figure out the hows and whys things happen to determine if they're going to continue happening in the future, right? That's how we make our money. We already mentioned about how much easier their schedule was, right? They beat their Pythagorean wins expectation by 2.6 games. They were one of the biggest overachievers statistically. That's their points allowed versus their points scored by 2.6 games. So they were actually closer to an 11-win team than the 14 wins that they got. They went 3-0 in close games. They were +8 in turnover differential, which is one of those fluky stats that changes
Mhm.
year to year. And they were third best in the NFL in injury luck. And oh, by the way, their offensive yards per point, which is a statistic I love, was number 2 in the NFL. Everything about this is screaming regression. Like the sirens are going off in my handicapper mind. Am I focusing too much on the numbers? Is this team just that talented and that solid on both sides of the ball where they're not going to win 14 games again this year? We know that, but they should be an 11 or 12 win team, right? They should be a top 5 NFL team, right? Or are we kind of ignoring some of the warning signs with this group? And it would be smarter to get out ahead of the public on, hey, maybe the Eagles aren't going to be as good as everyone thinks they are.
This is one of those situations where, as a handicapper or, the quote unquote talking heads, you know, you can look like a genius. I, for one, will be on the under for the Philadelphia Eagles. Whereas everyone else that you talk to, and even us at the beginning of this video, said that they're still probably one of, if not the best in the NFC. There's no doubt about that. They're very, very good. But I'm going to be on the under because of a lot of things that you just talked about. And then, the fact that they did lose their offensive and defensive coordinator. They lost a lot on the defensive side of the football, despite bringing guys in that can make a difference. But I want you to take a look at something, and I really want you to wrap your head around this. Week 11 to week 15. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games. I could sit here and tell you that Philadelphia could go 0-5 in those 5 games, and you can't necessarily just look at me and say I'm ridiculous. At Kansas City, absolutely can lose that football game. At home against the Bills, absolutely can lose that football game. At home against the 49ers, absolutely could lose that football game. At the Dallas Cowboys, absolutely could lose that football game. They did it last year. And then at Seattle, should win that football game, but that's the fifth
Still, you
of
don't just
5
walk into
straight.
Seattle and yeah, no.
No, that's the fifth of 5 straight games from week 11 to week 15. So if we're saying they're going to win 12, they could go 0-5 there.
Right.
They're not going to, but they could.
No, you're making a lot of sense. Their season win total number is set at 11.5. You are on the books on the under. I am absolutely going to agree with you. I would take the under. And now I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh my God, this is my number 2 team. I screwed it up. I screwed up my NFL power rankings. Like, we're starting all of this over. I'm going to rewrite all the previews, re-rank everyone, redo all the videos, screw the whole thing up. Yes, I'm going to take the under as well. Over the last 29 teams that won 14 or more games in the regular season, 19 of the 29 teams. There's only been 30 teams in NFL history that have won 14 or more games in the regular season. 19 of the last 29 of them did not win 11 games the next season. You touched on the schedule. I touched on some of the statistical indicators. Again, injuries. They were lucky last year. A.J. Brown gets hurt, let's say. Jalen Hurts gets hurt. A couple of their defensive line, it only takes a couple of injuries to completely change the profile of a team. So we are both on the books as taking the under. I'm dropping the Eagles back to like number 20 in my power rankings. That's it for today. Thank you for joining us, Nolan Patrick of Strike Point Sports. To the rest of you, carpe diem and good luck.